Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jesse Berst. I'm the chairman of the Smart Cities Council. I'm just going to briefly introduce the council and our other guests, and then sit down. We'll hear from a couple of presenters. We're going to have a dialogue on stage around some key topics, and then we're going to invite you to participate as well. If you'd like to tailor this session to your own particular interests and needs, we invite you to ask questions and make comments as well. Smart Cities Council is an industry coalition. It's comprised of many, or actually I'd say most of the world's top smart city practitioners. Cisco Systems is a founding member, among many others. Our job is to accelerate the market to try and lower the barriers to adoption. Our motto is livability, workability, sustainability. That's what we want to see for the world's cities. And we help support that goal by supporting and educating cities. So we've published the Smart Cities Readiness Guide, 27 principles to a conceptual framework, a vendor-neutral framework for building a smart city. We're next week out with our first version of our Smart Cities Financing Guide, 28 creative ways to finance smart projects. We have an apps gallery where you can browse a couple hundred of the leading smartphone apps that have been developed by cities around the world. Very cool. And many other tools, resources, financial calculators, case studies, and so on. I hope you'll visit smartcitiescouncil.com. All our materials are free for your download. And I'd also like to introduce Bruce Hayne, who's a councillor. He's in the center seat. He's a councillor from the city of Surrey, acting mayor. And I think very importantly, he's the chairman of two key committees, innovation and investment, as well as environment and sustainability. And I kind of think that smart cities sit at the intersection of those two aspects. He's also a business owner, and he's been a resident of Surrey for 23 years. To your far left is Wim Elfrink. He's the Chief Globalisation Officer and a corporate officer of Cisco. His passion is smart cities, and he's been working on smart cities diligently for at least the last 7 years. He's lived in 3 continents, on Europe, India, and now in the United States. And something that I think can make him even sexier to you than he appears right now, he's also heading up a $100 million investment fund to help finance innovation centers in cities around the world. So I know that Wim has to head off for the airport fairly soon this afternoon. So if you, during the presentation, just pull out a business card. On the back, write how much money you'd like. Pass those to the center, and we'll get them to Wim afterwards. And so let's get started. And Wim, would you join us, please?
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know that. So in the end, it's all about the money. You heard that? I thought it was all about sustainability. If I can have my presentation loaded. I have a couple of, only 5 slides, don't worry. But I really should like to make a couple of points. And my first point is always, I'm Chief Globalisation Officer, but my accent is Dutch, and I am very tribal. We had, by the way, 22 gold medals at the Olympics. The point I tried to make is, being tribal, I believe that the future of competition is going to be between cities. That cities are the only organism in the world that become more efficient if they grow and get bigger. And it's amazing to see how demographic shifts in the world are still very underestimated. I lived in Bangalore, a city where 1,000 people join the city every day. 1,000 people come in the city every day. And that means that you need a school every 3 months, a hospital every year, new, physically. And that's not going to happen. So we have to look in a different way. And we have cities like Detroit who are bankrupt and who have to start all over. How do you attract investors? But also, how do you attract young people? The war for young people is getting started. How do you make those cities sustainable? So you can be pessimistic. I want to make 3 points. I'm very optimistic. And I see basically technology as a key enabler, not the solution, as a key enabler to make cities smart. So my father was an architect in Rotterdam, and he built public places, schools, hospitals, the airport, but he always looked physically at a city. I look digitally as a city, and I think that the future is going to be that combination. The design, the public spaces, how everything looks, but then technology will be a digital overlay, and it will connect everything, and that applications will be in the cloud, as we call it nowadays. But I think this slide makes the point that still for a lot of governance bodies in cities, technology is an afterthought. For a lot of developers, for a lot of architects, technology is still an afterthought. So embrace it. And it's unbelievable what is happening at the moment. At this moment, we estimate that around 9 billion devices are connected. And it's growing to 50 billion. That is 30 million a week, or this session an hour, another 100,000 devices will be connected. And so basically, my first point, I'm going to make 3 points. The first point I want to make is that see it as a new essential infrastructure, like water, like gas, like electricity. And that new essential infrastructure has to be application-centric. And there is a big debate now I lived in India, like I said, where new entire cities are being built. Should we first build roads, physically, or should we first build virtual highways, broadband, city Wi-Fi? You need both. And the whole point is that all these connectivities, application-centric, will unleash a lot of creativity and applications. And if you look at young people, my sons are 14 and 16 years old, and they have 2 statuses in life. They are asleep or online. And whether you like it or not, that's the reality. And when he went back, my oldest, 16, to high school, and my wife said, "Did you pick up your books?" You should have seen his face. And how annoyed my wife was, because they have no books at school. The curriculum is online, and whether I like it or not, in the family room, they are always on their device. Because if I ask, "What are you doing?" I don't want you to text in the living room. And my youngest son will say, "I'm reading a book, Dad." But that is the type of new reality. All these devices, that growing to 50 billion, 100 billion, that's probably too conservative. They generate data. And the amount of data, that 90% of world's data is created in the last 2 years, just as data points. And more new data is generated in previous year, in 2012, than the previous 5,000 years. By 2020, we estimate that 40% of all data will come from sensors, and mostly in cities. Medium-sized cities of 2-3 million people will generate 2.5 petabytes by hour. And now you wonder, what's a petabyte? I didn't know. 1 petabyte is the same as 2,000 years of music stored. And that's being generated. And so we will have, I'm happy I don't have your job, Councillor, but all that data that's being generated, how are you going to monetize that? And so how do you make that data information? How do you make it knowledge? And how do you make it basically wisdom? How do you monetize it? How can you do what-if plannings? That's, with natural disasters, but also with route planning. That data is going to be the new, call it oil, of the economies and of the cities. And open data, black data, as we call it. So a lot of cities are starting to announce what they call digital officers. It's a new function. A lot of cities are just getting used to a CIO, and now they need a digital officer who's going to look at all that data and how to share it with the citizens and make it urban services and do something meaningful with it. I'm allowed to publish this slide. It's Barcelona. Barcelona just got the prize as the iCity in Europe. And we have been very proud that we have enabled. And this is a quote from Tony Vives, the deputy mayor. And he wants to make a livable, sustainable city. But he embraces technology to enable that. And so, we do assessment with cities and we say, what is the economic value? What are these new urban services that you can monetize? And at the same time, what is the productivity improvement? So for Barcelona, and these are Tony's numbers, they estimate that they can create 3.6 billion of value in the next decade. And you know what the killer app is? The killer app at this moment in most cities, parking services. Parking services. Who would have said it 5 years ago? It enables, it's the second source of revenue for a lot of mayors. So instead of raising taxes, raise the parking place the fees. It's 30% of congestion. And people are willing to pay money for it. And the average citizen in Paris is spending 4 years of his or her life finding a parking place. But now with all these sensors and things, and then of course apps. And we only have since 5 years cell phones, smartphones, and tablets. But it creates 15,000 apps a week. And so monetization and urban services are in acceleration. And so Barcelona is very proud that with their whole smart city strategy, it's documented, audited. They have attracted 1,500 new companies without my investment fund. That's a joke. And that's 44,000 new jobs. And then the net present value of parking services is 67 million, smart water 58, smart lighting 47. And so you can explain your citizens what you're doing and what the benefit is. You can attract young people. And you can have sustainability from a competitive point of view, economically, socially, and environmental. And these are the type of benefits that you can achieve in smart cities. You attract jobs, FDI, energy savings of 30%, relatively easy. Water consumption, 50%. Crime rates down if people are more happy. And Surrey is a great example. Traffic down by 30%. And then also in the underprivileged cities with slums, like Rio de Janeiro, you can bring education for $3 per student per month. And so it's not the digital divide that underprivileged people can't benefit by embracing technology. So my last opening remark, what will it take for cities? Well, visionary leadership, and you will hear the Councillor of Surrey. You have to embrace it. You have to have a governance model. Embrace global open standards. I also heard it in the previous talk here on stage. Don't let yourself lock in. Make sure that you use the right type of partners. Smart regulations. My home example is always when I came back from India to the US. We went in a new house, and you know boys, 14, 16, they never clean their room and they never switch off the light. So the electricity bill was, let's call it high. And it was a lot of waste. So I built a dashboard and showed it to them, and we had a little reduction. Now I share the savings in pocket money. The problem is solved. And so the point I tried to make, that as city councils, as government bodies, you get the regulation that you deserve. And so also as private sector, we have to invest in it. We need public-private partnerships, and more it will become public-private participations. Where we have to generate the funds that are necessary. And then last but not least, we need a rich new ecosystem. So I want to leave you with the 3 thoughts: embrace technology, digital overlay, a digital officer to mine your data, and then the right type of infrastructure to have the right governance. Thank you.
If you want to step on up.
That was excellent, Wim. And for those of you looking in your program, you probably saw that Mayor Watts was to be here this afternoon. She does send her apologies. He's quite under the weather, and so you'll have to put up with me instead. But with regard to your 23 gold medals. 22 gold medals. Not a single one of them in hockey. So, just saying. So good afternoon. My name is Councillor Bruce Hayne with the City of Surrey. And what I'd like to talk this afternoon about is how a fast-growing urban city can embrace smart technology in order to achieve some of the results and some of the goals that we're trying to, and look at some of the challenges that we have as a young, growing city. But first, I'd like to just sort of define perhaps what at least I mean by smart city, because there's so many different sort of definitions and so many different meanings. There's smart city, there's smarter cities, there's smart communities, intelligent communities, and so on. But really, what I like to define it as is a technology and innovation that informs decision making and creates efficiencies and maximizes resources in a sustainable manner. And that's what we're trying to do in creating a smart city. Now, just to give you a bit of a perspective, Surrey is a city with a population of a little over 500,000, and we're growing at 1,000 people each and every month. That's 12,000 people a year that we're growing at, and Surrey Memorial Hospital is birthing about 6,000 babies each and every year. So we're growing at about a population of about 18,000 people each and every year. Now, that creates its challenges, but it also creates some wonderful opportunities for us. And when you look at what the flip side of that coin might be, and you look at a city like Detroit, you realize that we'd much rather have the challenges and struggles that we have with a growing urban environment than one that is in a shrinking situation. So what we need to do is to embrace smart technology in order to create an environment that is both economically viable, sustainable, and is absolutely meaningful for our children of the future. 30% of the population of Surrey is under the age of 18. And so we have a very young demographic. We have a young demographic that is in need of great public education, that's in need of great universities, and then are also in need of great jobs when they come out, because we want them to live and grow and work in the city of Surrey without having to commute either around the Lower Mainland or out of the region. So when we look at our we call it Smart Surrey, and we're developing this Smart Surrey project, we're dividing it basically into 4 pillars. So we've got social engagement and connectivity as our first pillar, infrastructure as our second pillar, service delivery as our third, and economic growth as our fourth pillar. And I'll just give you a couple of examples in each of those. So in our social engagement and connectivity, we need to reach out to our community. We need our community to embrace technology, and we need to be able to use technology to connect with them on a more regular and more meaningful basis. And so we've developed an app called City Speaks. And what that is it's a communications app and a survey app that we can reach out to citizens. They can fill out brief surveys, engage with us on a regular and ongoing basis, and give us quite real-time feedback on new projects and new developments and new issues at the city. Another example of that is our Home Safe program, and this was put together by our fire department. And what they did was they analyzed fire data for the past several years. And with that data, we're able to go out in an outreach program to certain pockets of the community, take along with them smoke detectors, knock on doors, and introduce the residents to some of the fire safety issues, and hand out free smoke alarms to those that the data showed were most vulnerable of having fires. This had a 64% reduction in the annual rate of fires in home-safe houses, approximately 4.4 times greater than the reduction of 15% in high-risk homes in the same period that weren't in the fire-safe program. And the program cut fire losses in half and increased smoke alarm activity by 169%. So that's just one instance of being able to use data, do risk analysis and data analysis with it, and do something meaningful within the community. Another way that we're reaching out, we'll be reaching out to the community, is obviously through connectivity in citywide Wi-Fi and citywide fiber, and get Surrey to be the most connected city in the Lower Mainland. The second pillar I talked about was infrastructure, and this is looking at how we can use data, big data, open data in parts of our infrastructure and our infrastructure development. In 2009, we introduced our sustainability charter, and that was driven in part by some very aggressive carbon reduction targets at a provincial level for municipalities to become carbon neutral. It was also driven by the fact that we understood that as a growing municipality, we needed to do this in a smart way, an intelligent way, and in a sustainable way. So we put in some pretty aggressive carbon reduction targets, 20% by 2020 from our corporate fleet. And we entered into a whole series of programs looking at the data and analyzing our fleet usage of gas and diesel and so on, and how we could maximize carbon reductions in our fleet. And with that, we were able to determine, it was in partnership with Simon Fraser University, and with that, we were able to determine that there's certain vehicles in our fleet that could go on compressed natural gas. There was other vehicles in our fleet that would work very well as electric vehicles, and so on. And so we fanned those out throughout our fleet and maximized the carbon reductions in our fleet. As a result of that, we're putting in EV chargers throughout the city for, obviously, for corporate fleet use, as well as for public use throughout the city. Another example of that, and this was an offshoot of that, was our Rethink Waste program. And what we did with that, very briefly, is to separate organics at the curbside. Up until then, we'd had the blue box for recycle and your main box for garbage, and we did all that. And last October, we launched a program where we're separating organics. So everything from your grass clippings to your banana peels and your chicken bones going into an organic separated stream. With that, we were able to reach our landfill reduction targets almost in the first 3 months by over 40%. More importantly, we are in the process right now of building a biofuel facility. We're just in the final stages of the RFP process, and we'll be building a biofuel facility in the city, which will take all those organics, convert it to green natural gas, and we're going to close the loop. So we're going to take the garbage trucks that collect all those organics, fill them up with the green CNG, and have a complete closed loop system. It'll be the first of its kind in North America. The balance of the green gas that we don't need, we're going to put back onto the grid with Fortis. So that's just an example of some of the ways that we're looking at using the data and the smart technology in some of our fleet operations. And then we look at service delivery innovation. And getting back to the fire service again, Chief Len Garris is a very progressive fire chief, and we're so fortunate to have him. And he's worked with the University of the Fraser Valley and looking at the data to determine and predict where the next fire is going to be, and then allocating fire assets into those neighborhoods where the data shows the greatest chance of having that next fire. So that's just one of the ways that we're using the data in service delivery. Some of the other things that we're doing are mobile inspections. Our city inspectors have iPads, and they can go around and do electrical inspection, plumbing inspections, and so on development projects, and then provide deficiency lists and everything electronic while they're there. So again, using that smart technology, using apps in order to improve our service delivery. The thing about it is that, quite frankly, everybody is demanding more and more service. But nobody wants to pay more and more taxes. So simply, we have to become more efficient at how we go about doing things. And so what we're looking at doing is looking at each and every aspect of our city services, our city delivery, and applying smart technologies to it in order to deliver these services in a more efficient way and in a more cost-effective way for the residents. The fourth pillar is economic growth and economic development, and this is one of the key pieces for us. As I mentioned earlier, with a growing population, a rapidly growing population, and a youthful population, we have to be providing the jobs in our own community, and we have to look at economic diversification, and certainly smart technologies is, in our minds, the way we need to be going with our community. So we launched a thing called Innovation Boulevard about a year and a half ago. And Innovation Boulevard is about a 1 square mile or 1 square kilometer area bounded up by Simon Fraser University on the north and Surrey Memorial Hospital on the south. And it's specifically geared around health technologies. And this is a bringing together of our university, of our academia. Simon Fraser University, UBC is there, Kwantlen Polytechnic University is there, and so on, along with research companies, startups, incubators, as well as the public sector health. Fraser Health is at the table, along with all our other partners and the hospital, to create an area which is specifically designed to foster innovation in health technology. And we're very fortunate with Surrey Memorial Hospital, for example. It had a $500 million addition and upgrade to it done in the past couple of years. And with that, these companies then have access to clinical trials. They have access to Fraser Health, which is located there as well. And just as an example, Surrey Memorial sees 100,000 emergency visits a year. As I said before, it's 6,000 babies delivered there each and every year. So there's access to those clinical trials, and it creates a perfect environment for young startups and health technology companies to be able to come to the table and work with the researchers in the academia to advance health technology. As far as the technology side of it, we're extending the Canary fiber optic network from Simon Fraser University down to the hospital. And the Canary Fiber Network is a specific fiber optic network for health research in the university sphere, and it reaches out globally. So that's just one of the areas in health technology that we're working on. And we're doing a similar thing with clean technology as well, and fostering that innovation with our clean tech startups, with incubators and hubs to create that kind of atmosphere for growth. So those are just some of the things very quickly in the introduction. I hope I haven't gone too far over time. That Surrey is doing, and some of the challenges that we're facing. And it's an exciting road, but certainly we simply don't have an option. We must be looking at this from a smart city perspective. And it's something that we quickly realized is not going to be ever completed. We can't just say, oh, we've done that and tick off the box. It's something that will simply be always ongoing. And it's as technology advances, so must we, and stay ahead of it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Bruce. You know, I was really struck when you talked about more efficient service delivery, because as I'm talking with cities around the world, I'm seeing this phenomenon that I call, where cities are actually able to be more efficient, but do more while spending less. I call it happier for less, because you can give your digital services that cost you less to supply them, and yet citizens are more happy because it's self-service, it's on their smartphone, they don't have to go stand in line, you know, at City Hall. So I was interested to hear that you're heading down that path as well. I thought I'd start with Wim and ask you, you're certainly one of the most experienced smart city experts around. In the last 7 years, have you pulled out any real lessons learned, real sort of big keys that you notice?
Yeah, you know, that can probably fill an hour, Jesse.
Yeah.
But I think I started the practice of smart services, smart cities around 7 years ago. And initially, there was not a big ramp up. And a lot of people associated it just with broadband and expensive, and is there really a return on investment?
Right.
I think still, since we have the smartphones, the tablets, the open data, that people can start applications on top of what you have, that's an enormous breakthrough. The big lesson is, I always say that I like cities with deadlines. Mm-hmm. And it's so Olympic Games, you know, sports, an exhibition. They have to be, because it is something, it's hard. Mm-hmm. Secondly, it needs a very specific governance model. Right. You have to look cross departments. Yes. If you just look at your utilities, they have to work together. So I see cities most successful where they have a project management office. It's one vice mayor who's responsible for the smart city agenda. And then thirdly, you have to be able to celebrate every 3 months of success. To really, like what Bruce said, that example of the boulevard, to make it a case study, and that people see that they believe in it, and that you get that participation. And then people will start doing self-service. And they will start reporting potholes. They will start reporting if a light pole doesn't work. Participative democracy, you know, help create budgets in neighborhoods. That are the three things.
Great. And I hear similar things a lot. I was recently conferring with the Brookings Institution that has a really great metropolitan research program, and they said as they travel around, they see two big problems. One is the silos that you mentioned and needing to create some way to cross-cut. And the second is, to use their phrase, a lot of cities don't know what they want to be when they grow up. So they don't have a larger vision for 2030, or they don't really know what their strengths are, what their workforce is best at. They don't really know where their challenges are, or if they know them, they don't have them prioritized. And they don't really know what their aspirations are. Do we want to become a tourism center? Do we want to create a high-tech hub? Do we want to grow the health care sector or universities or bring back manufacturing. And we see that a lot. So the advice we give at the Smart Cities Council is be sure you create that consensus vision so that you can put the technology in service of the vision rather than just tech for tech's sake. So when you mentioned this need to organize, so I'll turn to Bruce and ask, how are you organizing internally for this? I know you mentioned a couple of committees. Is that how you cross-cut?
We have, and at a staff level, there's a multi-department committee that is overseeing this. It includes IT, it includes Parks and Recreation, it includes engineering, and so on. So that team at the staff level is very actively involved in creating the strategies and working with the committees to come up with the strategies.
Got it. We worked recently with the City of Hartford, Connecticut, and they used our readiness guide, and they found that they said very transformative, and the reason was it was the first time they had an excuse for all the departments to work together on something. So the mayor actually issued a proclamation and said they're going to do a Smart Cities initiative based on the Smart Cities Council framework. Every one of his 21 department heads is required to be on the committee and required to be at the monthly meeting in person. And it's really been transformative. They've got their Smart City roadmap, they've got their action plan, they've got their priorities set, and they're now moving forward to RFPs. Wim, have you seen other techniques around governance and internal organization that seem to work well?
It starts with, like you said, it's in a vision. Mm-hmm. A lot of cities talk about a 10-year plan and what they want to be, what their economic drivers are, understand your demographics. And I think like what Bruce said, Surrey is growing, 1,000 people a week. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people overlook their demographics. Do you have an aging citizen base? If so, how do you anticipate the change that you need to attract other things? I'm from Rotterdam, like I said, and it's a population in the Netherlands that decreases 5% per year. So whether you like it or not, to just maintain standard of living, you need 2% productivity improvements.
Wow.
To maintain standard of living. And so really understand your basics, your demographics, and based upon that, start your vision.
So Bruce, I want to turn now to a very difficult challenge, and that's funding. And I want to ask, how are you funding your projects? Maybe you could give us a couple examples of individual projects or the philosophy that you're using.
Jesse, I think the funding issue is a critical one, but it's one that is really unique to each project as you go. And funding models, I think, change depending on the project. I'll give you an example. With our Rethink Waste program and going to the organic collection and things like that, by switching to compressed natural gas trucks, not only did we lower our GHG emissions and so on, but the ROI on those trucks is 2.5 to 3 years based on the reduced fuel cost. And when the biofuel comes online, that's going to be even greater savings and so on. So that's kind of one of those really a self-funding type project that's actually going to reduce the monetary burden on the taxpayer. Other ones, like building out fiber throughout the city or Wi-Fi throughout the city, those are very much projects that require partnerships. Right. And so working with the industry sector to come up with solutions, and whether it's a triple P type project, where it's a design, build, and manage a facility or an infrastructure for a period of time with the private sector. We have to be looking at those things to be able to fund the projects that we need. And thirdly, we need to have the other levels of government at the table. Municipalities collect about 8% or take in about 8% of the total taxation. And you can imagine with the infrastructure that we have in cities that we need to have those partners at the table. Our biofuel facility that we're building in Port Kells, the federal government came to the table to the tune of $18 million with its infrastructure partnerships program. So, and then the private sector came as well. So the burden and the risk to the taxpayer is reduced.
Very interesting. We're seeing similar things. A lot of cities, I think wisely, are trying to find a quick win project that pays for itself quickly and then helps fund future projects. One we're seeing in several places is smart streetlights. In fact, Cisco and Itron are working on a pilot in Detroit right now, and the energy savings are so great from switching to LEDs. At the same time, you send out a truck to swap out the bulb. While you got them out there, you might decide to put in a communications chip and give your city a canopy network throughout the city, or you might put in 180-degree cameras, or you might put in microphones so you can triangulate gunshots, or you might do proximity sensors so that you can dim the lights when there's no people around and no cars and save even more energy. So we are seeing, but I'll turn to Wem and see, are you seeing other financing mechanisms that are gaining traction and helping?
Yeah, no, that's, we keep track of that. We have around 100 city projects, and we have seen more than 30 models. But if you summarize it, at this moment, I think 3. The first one is put it in the price of real estate. That's what Toronto, Sydney, Incheon in Korea. That basically price it up. Another model that you see is really look at like Barcelona, at the value you can create,
right,
and the efficiencies improvements you make, and then that get an external financial institute to come up with an infrastructure fund,
right,
because you can clearly prove the financial model and the revenues and pay back. So that's OPEX funding, we basically call that. And you have a lot of banks, Citibank, Credit Suisse, who are willing to invest in these type of projects. The third one we see is the digital rights.
Right.
And I think that one will have a big future. That if you really have a digital officer in your city and you start understanding the monetization of your data.
Right.
And you... It's in New York, 24/7 kiosks, and rent that out to in a bus stop. If you wait 10 minutes, that you can have a coupon to do something with it. Go to Starbucks. But so basically, a lot of cities have digital rights that they are not aware of, and so that are the 3 main ones. But mostly, it ends up in a hybrid.
Yeah.
And that you see a combination of the 3. But I think that monetization of digital rights and start mining your data, make it information, make it knowledge, and make it wisdom has a big future.
That's clever. You know, another thing we're seeing that gives me a little hope is that more and more smart city vendors are offering their services in the cloud. And so that gives the hope for a city that you can get really enterprise class, great applications, but without building a room full of servers, without hiring an IT staff, and without putting in that capital expense, just pay as you go, pay by the month. And I think that's very hopeful.
And just so you see similar, if we talk about sustainability, at the moment, that Solar City is offering you basically the infrastructure for free. But you have to sign then a contract for an X amount of years to take the energy from them.
Right.
And that is under... I live in California, the PG&E price. It is really compelling. It's OPEX financing.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'm going to ask another question or two, and then I'm going to turn to the audience. So if you've got something in mind, I hope you'll just take a moment and head up to one of the microphones, and I'll get to you very soon. I wanted to ask Bruce about citizen engagement. I know it's very important. Are you doing this on a project-by-project basis? So you mentioned your social media app and other. Are you organizing a town hall meetings? Has Smart City risen to the sort of an umbrella level? Are you having stakeholder meetings, or how are you approaching that?
Well, at this point, we do engage with the city in all those different ways that you talk about, and and conveying the sense of a smart city strategy to the community is sort of a phased approach in the different areas that we're working in, rather than this is our smart city strategy, so to speak.
Okay.
But we do engage them. The apps that I mentioned that we have, the City Speaks, is a way for a sort of a two-way dialogue with the community on various issues. We're just reworking an app that we had in the past year and a half. We had an app called See Click Fix, and we reworked that app. And that's an app where you can take your smartphone, take a picture of graffiti, take a picture of potholes or something like that, or a burned out street light, and send in a request to the city, and then track the progress of where that is in the system and when it will be dealt with, and so on. So as citizens start to see those type of engagement tools available to them, they start to get a sense of what we're doing. And then the other thing that we're doing is in a very public way. We put on a lot of events in the city, a lot of festivals and events in the city, like a Party for the Planet, for instance, around Earth Day and things like that, where we have booths and engagement tools and talk about those things one-on-one.
Great, terrific. You know, I actually think Vancouver did a pretty good job building its Vancouver 2020 plan in terms of citizen engagement and outreach and town hall meetings. Now, my taxi driver on the way in from the airport tried to convince me that the mayor's going to be voted out because he put in bike lanes in downtown, and their taxi drivers are going to vote him out. So I don't know if it'll last, but at least I think he did.
I don't think there are that many taxi drivers in Vancouver. You can never find one when you need one.
He was up in arms, I'll tell you. So, but be that Wim, have you seen other useful or clever citizen engagement practices?
Yeah, I think again that's the way to really embrace your citizens is get them involved.
Yeah.
So come up with apps that they can have influence. It's basically the same that we have seen in the industry with the e-commerce days, that initially people said, do I have to book my own ticket? Mm-hmm. That if you go on holiday, if you see the advantage, you will do it.
Yeah.
So get citizens involved by in the US publishing the 311 type of data. But then you have to be and make sure, Bruce, that you react quickly. If people report problems, that government picks it up.
Right.
And if these type of things start to work, and citizens really see that they have influence and that they can make things happen, the participation increases dramatically.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and it comes back to happier for less too, because as Hartford is beginning to switch over to digital, and it's turning out to be much less expensive than their 311 phone service to give a quick response back by a text message or an email. And also, they were getting just swamped by freedom of information requests. So they have an open data project in which they'll be publishing that data. There it is. Go get it, rather than us combing through paper records and making photocopies. So I don't have my glasses on, and I'm in the glare, but I can see vague humanoid shape there. So, sir, your question.
I lived 4 years in India, like I said, and I've been quite involved in making technology relevant for underprivileged people who live off $1 a day or have no access to electricity or water. The facts are at the moment, and I talk for India, I know India better than Africa, but still, the penetration of phones is high, extremely high. And it's now around 80%. My learning is that the killer apps are totally different. In a lot of villages in India, the killer app on a cell phone is the lamp for the middle of the night. But I've also seen that, and I show these statistics, that with applications in the cloud, like education, healthcare, that contact to primary healthcare center is doable from your phone. It's not the best, but it's better than nothing. And 70% of doctors' calls don't need physical intervention. And so you start seeing that rural areas, underprivileged villages, get access virtually. And we do also some projects in Kenya, Nigeria, that I can refer to. That technology more and more will become an equalizer for society. Because you can connect people, you can give them access to healthcare, you can give them access to education for affordable prices.
Yeah, and I would also add to that and just say that it is possible for some developing cities to leapfrog. For instance, Council Member Bechtel is working with Libreville, and they're just jumping straight to a really compelling digital infrastructure, with help from development banks and philanthropy. And I'll also say that a lot of this digital services provide the most benefit to low-income families. So in South Africa, they've created a social benefits card. It's like a debit card, and instead of waiting to get a check, it gets loaded onto your card. And many of these people didn't have a bank account, so it was very difficult. And it even has biometrics in it, so you can prove your identity because they had a history of theft. So sometimes it can be a great thing for lower income. And I think we have another question behind you. Thank you. Well, I will say that a number of the members of the Smart Cities Council have platforms with dozens or even hundreds of applications. So it's often quite possible to, again, use these cloud-based software as a service thing and tap into something developed for another city, perhaps one much larger, but that you can get started with very quickly. Others?
Yeah, and I can just add to that that certainly we as a municipality are always ready and willing to share what we have with other neighboring municipalities. And we had a delegation yesterday who are at Globe, and they're from Mexico, that came out to City Hall to have a look at some of the things that we're doing, and wanted to learn more about the biofuel facility and how to change over with organics and things like that and waste collection. And so we've made that connection, and absolutely we'll share those kind of things. So because it's through that kind of collaboration, it's through FCM, it's through UBCM and so on, that all of us in municipalities are going to get stronger and going to get better at what we're doing. So
terrific. And I'll also mention again, the Smart Cities Readiness Guide is free for download. It's got about 50 case studies, links to dozens more. The apps gallery's up there. Take a look. You can see other cool things which are often available from a vendor, or maybe the city will help you get it started. Ma'am.
In Asia, we see actually a lot of greenfields. That's where we start planning new cities from the ground up. That's in China. That's 100 cities of 1 million people and more are on the drawing boards. In the Philippines, Indonesia, is actually happening, and it is an advantage to start from the ground up. I always say that God was able to create the world in 7 days because there was no install base. So you see a rate of innovation, and you see these trade-offs between physical infrastructure, virtual infrastructure, and the way cities are designed. And that's being from the Netherlands with Amsterdam and Rotterdam. And these are cities designed to go to your work. And that if you talk about the future of work and how that will impact cities, where work comes to you. And I always say, don't commute to compute. Don't go to your office to work. And that as knowledge workers, you can work wherever you want. And so in concepts, that specifically in Indonesia, that with all the islands, it's not about fiber, it's about Wi-Fi. It's about virtual connectivity through the air. And then the way we look at new applications in education, in healthcare. And it's so, sometimes it is an advantage to have nothing and to start with a clean type of drawing board. And we built our second head office actually in India. Because we expect that the next decade, the next 20, 30 years, a lot of innovation will come out of these greenfields. And that's we call it reverse innovation. And so it's extremely important between the globe and that institutes like Jess is representing here to bring these parties together. And that we can learn probably as much from that part of the world as they can learn from us. And avoid the mistakes that we have made.
Thank you. Any final question? Anyone else? Well, there's two things I'd like to finish up on. When you gave a slide of 5 necessities, and one of those was smart regulation. So let's talk a little bit about, as you're traveling around, what kind of policy initiatives, incentives, laws, regulations do you see that really help a city succeed?
Most of the policies are based on old technology. It is water containers that you have to put something in the ground. It are electricity laws that are far overdue. It is fire brigades that requires analog access. I think in a digital overlay, but a lot of regulation is still built on analog technology. And things that you can touch, that you can have, that you can handle. So you see a lot of redundancy and overlap because of that. I think the new policy that we have to start developing and where we are behind is in relation to security and privacy. I think that are two things that need much more attention. And then specifically that give citizens more or less a contract that you can opt in or can opt out. And probably it's 5-10 years away that young people will make a selection of cities where they want to live based on that opt-in or opt-out. What are the services? What about security? What about privacy? I think that are, from a regulation point of view, still the most underestimated elements.
We're certainly seeing that as well. One of the scariest things about smart cities, and they have their challenges too, is I see cities who are expecting each individual department to make its own decisions about cybersecurity, for instance, or no decision at all, or their own decisions about a data privacy policy, or no policy at all. And that's, I think that's crazy. You want a citywide data privacy, a citywide cybersecurity policy, and you want to be working with vendors and other people who have great expertise in that, because I don't see how cities can hope to keep ahead on their own. Plus, there's a lot of great frameworks you can borrow. Ontario, for instance, has developed a great privacy policy, and it's published for others to borrow and amend as they see fit. We link to a number of others in the readiness guide. Bruce, are you thinking about policy changes? Are there issues that have come up as you started down your path that present challenges?
Oh, absolutely, no question. And one of the biggest ones for us, and Wim touched on it, is the open data. And we realize that we want to put that data out there. We need to have that data out there so that we can leverage it with third-party app development and all of that. At the same time, there's a reluctance in some areas and in some channels, because it's something new, that the thinking that if you put data out there, it can be used against you, because data sets can, statistics can tell you anything that you want. So that is a little nerve-wracking as we move forward in that area. But we realize, and you mentioned it a little earlier as well, about FOI requests and that sort of thing, that it takes up an inordinate amount of time, and it through multiple departments in the city, and we believe that more open data is more accountable government, and that's where we want to be, and that's why we want to get there. And it's just a matter of doing it in a logical, safe way, so that we do protect privacy, but we put the data out there that's meaningful for people. So that's one of our largest challenges that we or any municipality right now is facing. And in BC, for instance, we can't do cloud computing because of provincial laws that mandate that all our data be housed within the province and so on. So we have all those other issues and that sort of thing to deal with. But certainly open data is going to be the key.
I'll finish up with this question. I'll start with Bruce and then Wim. So Wim mentioned new ecosystems as one of the 5 requirements. Are you as a city, are you part of any learning organizations, informal or formal? Are you building any alliances or anything?
At this point, we are. There's a mayor's group with Canadian cities that our mayor is a part of, and they have regular Skype conferences and things like that on these issues. Certainly, at a staff level, our IT department and our senior management team are all involved in various associations that are looking at these issues, and then more informally, doing as much as we can to attend various conferences and things like that. We mentioned Barcelona. I was fortunate enough to go to the Smart Cities Expo last year in Barcelona, and one in Toronto as well, and so on. So we take every opportunity we can to learn from others in an informal way.
Thanks. And one more, other examples of ecosystems?
Yeah, so rule of thumb, I think that's on my 5 things. I also said that make sure that you go for global open standards, that you don't be locked in. And so as a rule of thumb, 60, and it's forming conglomerates. I think that's the challenge for all cities. And so the rule of thumb is 60% global companies who will have global open standards, 20% national, because of culture, local regulation, that country specifics, and then probably 20% in the city. Specifically the development of apps. And that's also a great opportunity to create jobs. And that last year alone, in the apps world, 350,000 jobs were created. So 60% global in the ecosystem, at 20% national, transnational, but at least 20% local. And I'm tribal, I said it in my opening, and that you really get developers who understand what Surrey is, understand what Vancouver is, who understand what Beijing, Amsterdam is, and who can appeal to that feeling of, I belong to this or that community.
Terrific. Great stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, would you join me in thanking Wim and Bruce?
Thank you.